Hello and welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
All right, you guys ready for a sadist serial killer yet again? We have a suggestion to cover. Thank you to Alex Shanley, who gave us this case. Kind of flies under the radar. There was so many Pacific Northwest serial killers working in the 70s and 80s that a guy like Dayton Leroy Rogers could slide under the radar.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Upwards of, almost 10 people in just absolute horrifying manner. Just an absolute sexual sadist, loved to torture women, got off on biting them, drawing blood, and basically hearing their screams in agony. And when you dive into his childhood, you can see a little bit of what creates a monster like this, because he had a pretty shitty upbringing.
Oh, yes. This is a nurture incident, I would say.
Yeah.
Right? Because he had siblings. He had quite a few siblings that, as far as we know, turned out okay, I guess. But, if this guy's been hidden in history for this long, then who knows, right?
Yeah. There's a conversation to be had here as well when it comes to the dumping of victims. Cluster dumps seem to be more effective as far as not getting caught and being able to continue to kill for a longer period of time.
Yes.
But I feel like when you look at some of the more successful serial killers, like Ted Bundy was kind of famous for the cluster dump as well.
Yeah.
And
Ridgeway.
It just concentrates the chance of you getting caught, or the chance of the victim being found. A person has to stumble into one little area as opposed to you scattering the bodies around in a, what was his name? The scorecard killer, Randy Kraft.
Gosh,
He was dumping bodies off the side of the highway all over the place, same as like William Bonin.
Right.
A lot of those guys, there was bodies being found everywhere, which creates its own problems, but I feel like you just can completely, especially if you're picking, like this guy's method here was picking up sex workers who weren't necessarily going to be reported missing or weren't going to be missed.
Right.
He would kill them and put them all in one little tight area in the woods, and until a hunter finally stumbled across this site, there was nothing to, no one even knew what was going on really.
And that's the bad.
Sex workers work in downtown Portland. Kind of, they would notice some of the girls coming up missing, and they knew of this Steve character who was a sadist, and every now and then would pick a girl up and torture them and actually let them walk. But
they knew him as Steve the Gambler, right? That was his alias that he used over and over again, which is weird that he would use. That's another part. That's another thing about this guy, was that he was so bold in the way that he acted, his MO, his actions, where he did some of these killings was so bold. It's amazing he got away with it as long as he did.
Once again, it's about the victims that you targeted during this time.
Yes, you're right.
70s and 80s.
You're right.
Into the 90s, if you
Nobody
targeted
cared.
sex workers, the police just didn't care that much. Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of people like pushing the police to find them either. So
yeah, it took him killing one in the middle of a street before it finally got their attention, and then
in front of a Denny's.
Yeah. I mean, that's the level of boldness that this guy had, I guess you could call it. Man, yeah. But the body dump thing, going back to that. It's a great technique until one of the bodies is found, though, right? And then it's like a pile of evidence against you.
Yeah.
It's detrimental. I don't know what would be better. I don't know if that's a good tactic or a worse tactic. But I think most of these guys, especially in the Pacific Northwest, they think that this forest is so dense and so thick and so much rain, you know what I'm saying? And so much leaf falls and whatnot.
It speeds up composition too, all that moisture.
Exactly. And even in the summer with the heat and the moisture and the humidity, it does. It speeds it up a lot. And I don't think that they think that anyone's ever going to find these bodies, much less a pile of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And then once they do get caught, like when they find that grouping of bodies, it's pretty easy to say, well, this is the work of one person. And then they just gotta connect you, like maybe with some little Smirnoff mini vodka bottles and some orange juice bottles.
Yeah, something like that. That you were known to buy.
The word of a few sex workers that know of this Steve the Gambler character and a matching truck and, a lot of evidence. But we'll get to all that. Let's dive into this case. Thank you for the suggestion, Alec. Let's dive into Dayton Leroy Rogers.
Let's do it.
The enormity of my crime makes the word sorry all but inadequate. It would seem like an insult to even say it. But I still need to say it whether it's received or not. I am sorry. So very sorry. I own the truth. I own what I did. I had no right to take the lives of Jennifer, Rita, Lisa, Noni, Cynthia, Christine, Maureen, or Tanya. There's never a day that I don't struggle within the very core of my heart and soul. I became so overwhelmed, repulsed, broken by my own evil carnage. I literally died to self. I desperately sought spiritual rescue from my own personal demons. So yes, I sought a new God. You have heard from some of the good people who have supported my journey since I have been in prison, providing study tools and fellowship. Because of what I've done and caused, I have literally sentenced the lives and hearts of the victims' family members to a lifetime of precious loss and sorrow. I have clearly shown to all of myself that I belong in prison for the rest of my life. I absolutely agree that I have forfeited my place in free society and that I forever belong behind bars till I die. And yes, death will surely visit me in its due course.
All right, this case this week, we dive into the Pacific Northwest in the mid to late 1980s to cover Dayton Leroy Rogers. And, you know, we've covered several cases from the Pacific Northwest in the past. They were famous stomping grounds for some of the most infamous serial killers in history, many of which we've done episodes on, like Ted Bundy, Gary Ridgeway, Jerry Brudos, and Randall Woodfield. But also in the mid to late 1980s, there was another sexual sadist serial killer dumping bodies of sex workers in the dense forests that get frequent rainfall and provide quite a cover for your dumping grounds, your cluster of bodies. Dayton Leroy Rogers was known as the Molalla Forest Killer. He killed street women, usually addicts, sex workers, and runaways. He would pick them up usually under the pretense of sex for money, then take the majority of his victims to secluded areas where he would bind, torture, rape, and murder his victims, usually with a knife, leaving the bodies in a forest outside of Molalla, Oregon. He was active for 5 years, well, nearly 5 years. It was about 4.5 years, from 1983, January, to August of 1987, and is known to have 7 confirmed and 8 possible victims, although there's no telling whether there was more or not. We know we have direct testimony of several women that he tortured and raped who survived by one means or another. All of the while, he maintained a business and
I think
had
there's
a wife.
A good chance there could be more.
Oh, for sure. The one thing that would kind of, say no to that theory is that he had the cluster. It seemed like he had a clear modus operandi in that he would take the women to the same, at least maybe not kill them all in the same location, but he would dump the bodies in the same location. But there's no.
Well, when I say victims,
maybe there was another dump site. Maybe he had started another dump site somewhere. Who knows? But.
Well, right. And also, when I say victims, though, I don't always just mean murder. I think there was plenty of rape and assault victims that got away or left and were too afraid to say anything.
Yep.
This guy was so spontaneous and so violent. Mm-hmm. They were terrified, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and all the while he was maintaining a business, had a wife, and a toddler son at home. Let's talk about the book.
Double life.
Yeah, the book that we used to research this case, really well done book called Bloodlust, Portrait of a Serial Killer, Businessman, Family Man, Serial Killer by Gary C. King. It is on Audible.
Renaissance man.
Yeah, it's on Audible. I think it's like 9 hours, but the narrator talks pretty slow, so you can speed it up to at least 1.5 or even 2 speed. and still taking the information.
Nice.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning, as we like to do on this podcast, and
Let's do it.
Learn about the childhood that creates these monsters. So Dayton Leroy Rogers was born on September 30th, 1953. He shares a birthday with T-Pain and Truman Capote.
Nice.
So quite a mix there, those two.
Dude,
Truman Capote,
I seen
classic writer.
I seen that T-Pain was trending on Twitter like a few weeks ago, and you know why he was trending? Because he had like 200 unread messages from other celebrities in his Instagram message request box. All these celebrities were wanting to collab with him over the last like however many years, and he just ghosted all of them. Just ghosted all of them, not on purpose.
How did someone find out about this?
I guess someone told him, was like, "Oh, you should check this message box or whatever."
Oh, he just didn't know about it?
Yeah, he put out like a story on an Instagram story, and he's just scrolling through these countless. It's just everybody's a blue check too. It's like everybody's somebody, and he's like, y'all, I'm so sorry. I've been ghosting all these people. He's like, hit me up if y'all still want to collab.
They're like, bro, you're not even relevant anymore. It's fine.
Oh, T-Pain.
But now that you're trending on Twitter, let me second guess this.
Okay, well, maybe.
Right. That's great. As someone who kind of thinks celebrities are overrated, I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But also Truman Capote in the true crime world, well known for his novel In Cold Blood, known as one of the greatest true crime novels ever written.
Was that not the first true crime novel written? I believe it was.
It can't be maybe. It was one of the first, but it was definitely
I'll look it up right quick.
It was definitely the earliest really well-known one.
Yeah. Because I know early crime writings were all fictional, because that's the only way people could digest it. They're like, oh, we don't want to hear. It was.
Really?
1959. It's the murder of the Clutter family in Holcomb, Kansas. It was. Yeah. I thought I read that, dude, because I was reading a little history about true crime, this article that caught my attention, and it was like top true crime books from history, and In Cold Blood was still one. And then the first sentence, it was like the first ever true crime book, or nonfiction true crime book. So that was pretty groundbreaking for the time. Sure, it terrified people.
So maybe at some point we'll cover that one. That's quite a novel to tackle there. You have to read that book if you're going to cover that case.
Oh, of course.
I'm sure that book is probably like at least 30 hours on Audible. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That'll be a
that's why
Patreon
we've
exclusive.
dodged that one for a while, because we have a week to prepare for a show, and that's quite a book to cover.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, Dayton Leroy Rogers, as we mentioned, was born in 1953, and he was born in Moscow, Idaho, to a pair of devout Seventh-day Adventists named Ordis and Jasperell Rogers. And we'll talk a lot more about his parents, especially his dad.
Yes, we will.
But he also had 3 biological sisters, 3 adopted sisters, and 1 adopted brother. So 7 siblings.
Wow.
And we recently talked, I don't know if was it on Just the Banter, or was it on, I think it was our last week's episode, actually, our last,
Probably.
how there was a common theme when it comes to serial killers, when it comes to their parents being on opposite ends of parenting tactics.
Yes. One's very strict, and then one's like more kind and doting.
Yeah.
And, you never do anything wrong.
It's funny that we just talked about that, because I feel like this case is a prime example.
I do too.
Yeah. Dayton's father hated children and never wanted any kids, but his mother, Jasperell, on the other hand, adored children, and thus they ended up with 8 kids, 4 of them being adopted.
God.
Imagine hating kids and you end up with 8 of them.
Right?
I almost understand Ordis's anger now. It's like, I never wanted kids and I have 8 of them.
No wonder he treated them like shit.
Right.
I didn't want them in the first place. Still no excuse, but that does explain a lot.
Yeah, so Ordis focused most of his energy on trying to provide financially for the large family, but the other bit of energy that he had left, he spent physically and verbally abusing his children. He frequently lashed out and attacked the children with no explanation afterwards. Like, if you're going to dole out physical punishment for kids, I know a lot of people, some are for, some are against, depending on the severity of it, obviously.
Right.
But I feel like there at least has to be an explanation for why you're doing it. If you're going to spank a kid or whatever it is, like,
you have to. Yeah.
You can't just do it out of nowhere for the kid's like sitting there confused, like, what did I do? Like,
God, my ass hurts. What did I do?
Yeah, you just do it and then walk away. Like,
right.
That seemed obviously he was doing more than just spanking too. He was like beating the shit out of these kids.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And I'm sure there were some choice words flying. I'm sure they had a pretty good idea what was going on, but it's no excuse to beat your children. Just because, well, let's make something clear here. Just because we're explaining what you're doing doesn't mean you can beat the shit out of your kids. I'm beating you, cuz.
And obviously the goalposts have moved a lot here. This is the 50s we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it was definitely more common to physically strike your kids and whatnot. On one occasion, Jasperell's brother, so the mother of the kids, so it'd be the kid's uncle, witnessed Ortis force young Dayton to sit in a chair while he repeatedly beat Dayton's legs. Dayton amazingly sat there with almost no reaction. And then the family, so this just adds insult to injury here. The family then allegedly sympathized with Dayton, but not with Dayton, but with Ortis because he had burst a blood vessel in his hand during the assault. So while he beats his son in the legs while sitting, that's some next level abuse that like really sick people do to their kids, where they, like strike them in the thighs because people, like authorities aren't going to check there for abuse of kids. Like those areas.
That's exactly
that's
what's happening
next level
here.
shit.
Yeah. But I wonder what Dayton did to deserve this for the family to not even sympathize with him after that.
What could he have done? He's a kid,
Yeah. How old was he on this occasion? Do you know?
No, it wasn't specific on an age there. It just said
I'd like to know.
one occasion when he was, I think he was probably under 10 years old.
Well, look, if he's able to sit there with no reaction, he's got to be at least a preteen, I'd say.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not impossible. Kids can block out stuff and go somewhere else for sure. But I think he would have to be quite mature.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also says something about the family that they would sit there and defend the father, and that I think they just wanted the attention directed away from them when it comes to the abuse. So like
they're probably afraid of him. They're
that's what I'm saying. It's better Dayton than me, so I might as well, I feel sorry for Dad, so he doesn't turn that on me.
Yeah. Let me get an ice pack for your hand, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got you.
So Ortis was also very serious about his religious beliefs. He strongly suppressed and had vitriol for sexual thoughts and actions, and that the Rogers household was under extremely strict censorship. A prime example was his own Hawaiian record album collection, of which he loved the music. However, he detested the sluts, in his words, that were dressed in hula dresses on the covers of the albums. And he would actually take time to draw clothing on the women with black ink as to not expose his family to such filth.
Oh my God. Are you... That is native traditional clothing right there. Like, what the hell? Like the most organic thing.
Sitting down and drawing clothing on them.
Oh my God. With the little Sharpie. Just drawing like oversized black t-shirts on them and shit.
Like, do you so badly need the album covers? Can't you just, I don't know. To actually take the time to draw clothing on them rather than just like put tape over it or something. I don't know. This just takes it to new weird levels.
Dude, there are some pretty provocative album covers back in the day, though. It's like, whoa, this came out
you think
in the
about
50s?
What a big deal Elvis was because he shook his hips a little bit, like what a conservative culture we had.
Yeah. I have this album by a man named Herb Alpert, and he's a jazz trumpet player. Okay, he's pretty well known. I found this album spontaneously, and I picked it up for like $0.25, and then I loved it, so I bought a whole bunch of other Herb Alpert albums. But in one of his album covers, he has this girl that's sitting there, and she's completely naked, and she's holding a can of whipped cream, and she's just got whipped cream over like her vagina and her breast, and that is it. Over the whole,
the old Varsity Blues.
Yeah, pretty much like that. You got it. But this record had to have come out in like the 60s, so I would imagine it was pretty provocative, pretty risque.
I mean, that's a sexy instrument, the tuba.
No, it's a trumpet.
Trumpet, yeah.
It can be. Not as sexy as the saxophone, but it's getting there.
Oh, dude, the sweet, sweet saxophone. You can't mess with that.
Right? It even sounds like sex. Sex, so close. I know what they're doing.
Yeah, so Ortis, man, he would actually, like we mentioned, draw the clothing on those, and then he also preached that women that had sex before marriage should be stoned, just as it said in the Old Testament.
Yeah, definitely. Great idea. That's a great way to kill the human population. What a stupid. How outdated is that shit?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And some Old Testament fogies, bro. They hold on to that shit. They really do.
Yeah,
It's
and
scary.
we'll talk more about his father's beliefs and their effect on that effect on the children of this family. The family moved constantly, partially due to his father following work wherever he could get it. So, in trying to provide for his family and these 8 children, he would basically take whatever work he could get, whether it was painting or repair, or whatever it was. They ended up moving all over the place for that, but also because his father believed, as part of their beliefs in the Seventh Day Adventists, that the end times were around the corner.
Right.
And so if you know this belief system, part of the Seventh Day Adventist fundamental beliefs was the second coming and end times, which read that Jesus Christ will return visibly to earth after a time of trouble during which the Sabbath will become the worldwide test. The second coming will be followed by a millennial reign of saints in heaven.
Right. The Seventh-day Adventist, because they put so much focus on the Sabbath, so much so, they think they're the only people that have the Sabbath right. And what they think is that Saturday is the Sabbath. So they go to church on Saturday. And they think that once, the end of time, the time of trouble, the rapture, whatever you want to call it, is going to happen on a Saturday. And everyone else is going to be at home sinning. And they're going to be like, ha-ha, suckers. It was Saturday, not Sunday. Right. We're out of here.
You're a day late, bitches.
You missed the boat. No joke. They're Saturday churchers. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. I just think that that's an odd thing to get stuck on.
Right.
Hey,
it's all in how you interpret these books, I guess. Everyone has their own take on it. But due to his father's strong belief in this, the family refused to live close to big cities, and they often ended up in trailers or shacks on large properties. On one occasion, they lived in what was formerly a chicken coop that had a dirt floor. Can you imagine? That's the filthiest place I could imagine to live, just about, other than living like the Ninja Turtles in the fucking sewer system. But a chicken coop, chicken coops, they're disgusting. I mean, I have one right now, and I hate to go in there to clean that thing. That you breathing in chicken shit and dust, and they're filthy animals. Just imagine that's your house now. That's crazy.
Yeah, man, that's a pretty horrible living condition. Didn't Damien Eccles have a pretty bad living condition as well? Where I don't know if he had.
He might be the only one that I can think of as far as poverty.
Yeah.
Growing up his house was so infamous that it was part of a painting, because it was this little tiny shack in the middle of a crop field, and they got literally crop dusted with chemicals and shit.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could think of worse than growing up in a chicken coop.
Right, I remember that. God, that's brutal, man. The chicken coop. I guess if you sweep those floors real good.
Right.
Damn.
So you combine that, and there was so much sexual suppression, guilt, and censorship in the family home. Dayton found a way. Of course, as all young boys, hormones get going, they're going to find a way to get their rocks off. And for him, there wasn't even a hula dancer to look at. So he found an unorthodox fashion, as you might imagine, and he became obsessed with his sister's feet, frequently stealing their shoes after they went to bed and masturbating with them late at night.
What?
As he grew older, he got worse in school as well, and out of a sheer lack of interest it wasn't that he wasn't capable. He was actually, of normal intelligence, but he just had no interest in school, and his relationships with his parents also worsened. He grew to hate his father for obvious reasons, and hated his mother for always taking his father's side on things.
Right.
So yeah, it's not going well.
No.
But the sister's feet thing, I didn't really give you a chance to.
No. I mean, I
talk about that one.
I guess I really don't think it's that weird in a household that is that sheltered, that restricted. It's like you said, he's gonna figure out something something to fixate on. And
mine and my friends' quest to find anything to masturbate to when I was a young teenager, we would find porn anywhere we could,
right.
Literally in deserted lots that homeless people, any way we could find something to masturbate to. So it's if you're in this household, there's literally absolutely nothing.
There's nothing.
So I guess you're just looking at your sister's shoes oh, look at those.
Yeah, right. You just create something.
I don't know how this works.
I don't know. You just create something out of nowhere. You just need something to fixate on, I guess.
And then guess what? When that's that pivotal age too, where your sexual desires are being discovered, that's
formative
he went down
years.
that avenue, and then there was no turning back. He was then obsessed with feet for the rest of his life.
Right. You can't just turn that off now. If you would have just gave the kid normal leeway to,
We're not saying give the kid porn,
No.
but you know what I mean?
Right. I don't know.
Maybe just leave a Cosmo magazine laying around or something.
Maybe like one of those old JCPenney mags. Leave the underwear section there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Something.
Yeah, give
Something not too
throw
bad.
that kid a bone. Damn.
Jeez. So one of the family's many yearly moves, they were known to move multiple times per year. One of these moves landed them in College Place, Washington, where Dayton would attend Walla Walla Valley Academy for 7th grade. During this time, he would have his first of many run-ins with the law, and this is when he and a friend got caught by police shooting a BB gun at passing cars.
Yeah, I think
Pretty standard
about to
type
say,
of way to get in
this-
trouble as a young kid.
I think most kids.
I did the same type of shit.
Yeah, I think most kids, especially before the time of the video game invasions, you got in trouble for shooting your BB gun at something. If it wasn't cars, it was windows or somebody else or birds.
Throwing rocks
Yeah.
or
somebody's
in my
dog.
case, throwing hot sauce packets at cars that drove by and just stupid
I got
shit like that.
chewed out from my grandma because I shot a squirrel in her front yard. She just happened to be looking out the window. She was washing dishes, and she just saw this squirrel drop from a tree randomly. And being the animal lover that she is, she ran out there to help it. And there I am standing with my BB gun. Boy, she chewed my ass out.
Oh yeah, I bet.
I felt like shit. I don't know if I've killed anything with a gun since then, other than something that was like suffering. So yeah, I guess it kind of stuck with me. I was just like, what?
Poor squirrel.
I'm surprised she didn't make me eat it. Shit. She probably. I don't feel like making
Right?
this.
Yeah, I heard squirrel's not all that tasty.
I don't do this shit no more. Ain't enough meat on it. I can hear her now.
So in the BB gun shooting incident, both boys would get probation, but of course Dayton also got a severe beating from his father.
Oh yeah, of course.
Following this incident, he would also be sent off to Upper Columbia Academy, which was a church-run boarding school near Spokane,
There we
Washington.
go. That'll fix some more
where his grades-
limitations.
Yeah, let's stick him in a boarding school now. When his grades continued to get worse, and of course he wouldn't have to stay there long because the family would move yet again. That's the only solace in that is like if he got stuck in a shitty situation, it was just a matter of time before they moved
What
again.
did his dad do
And he
again?
got a fresh start. Whatever he could.
Oh,
Like
okay.
he would take any odd jobs and wherever work took him.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
This time their move took him to Pleasantville, Oregon, where Dayton would attend Emerald Junior Academy. This would be the last of the formal education for Dayton Rogers, though. He would drop out of the academy at age 16 and moved this time alone to Corvallis, Oregon, where he would get a job as a house painter making $2 an hour. He's out on his own now.
All right. That's a start.
$2 an hour sounds like, man, it sounds like nothing, but for the time, I'm sure that was like standard.
Yeah, it's minimum wage.
To think I made $5 an hour in 2004 as a grocery bagger for Vaughn's.
Yeah. I made $6 in
$2
2006.
To think
so,
this was what, like, you know, we're talking maybe the early 1960s. He's making $2 an hour. So
right.
I feel like that's better than $5 an hour in 2004.
I agree 100%. I was just about to say that. I was like, man, I'm kind of jelly of his wage now. The cost, if you go
Right?
back to the cost of living.
Oh my God, right? You could buy a house for like $5,000.
Wouldn't it be crazy if you could travel back in time? You know, in that Stephen King book, 11/22/63, there's a portal in the guy's diner, and that's how he sells his hamburgers so cheap in present day. It's because he goes back and buys his meat from the 1950s. It's pretty crazy. That's just a small part of the book.
Okay.
It's not really a spoiler.
Of all the different things you could do with time travel to get rich, like buying meat and reselling it at a higher rate just seems like on the low end for me.
No, he had tons.
I'd be like buy Microsoft stock.
No,
Or fucking
oh no, this guy was rich. This guy was super rich, like because he gambled on sports because he already knew, right? So he gambled on sports, and that's how he made all his money. But he wanted to.
There's going to be this thing called Bitcoin.
But he ran-
It's going to be like $1 at some point. Just buy as much as you can.
Right. But he ran the diner, to stay low key, stay under the the radar.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't mess with that. You can't mess with that. As we've learned from Back to the Future, you don't want to mess with the future.
That's right. Yeah, don't fuck with that.
Don't want to run into your former self. There's a butterfly effect that happens.
That's right. Only one of you can exist.
Yep. So he gets this job as a painter working in Corvallis, Oregon, and 2 years later he would move. It seems like he just got so used to moving that he ended up doing it himself as an adult too. He would move this time to Eugene, Oregon, where he met a 16-year-old girl named Julie, who he would soon marry. And this marriage was not acceptable in the eyes of Dayton's parents, as you might guess. Julie was of a different faith. She was Lutheran.
Oh no.
And she had also had a kind of a rocky past. She had been institutionalized in the past for drug and alcohol
Well,
abuse.
she might as well have been Satan herself. Wow.
Yeah, we talked about, these days, the 50s, 60s, when it came to women, if they made any mistake, they would just get institutionalized oftentimes.
Oh, yeah.
We learned a lot about that in the Nellie Bly episode.
Yes.
So a young girl being institutionalized in this time, like
Holds no
what we
weight
know
to me.
now, holds no weight. It's like, okay, so her dad or somebody just got like sick of her, was just like, I'm putting you away type of thing.
Yeah, probably.
Less than 30 days after the marriage began, Dayton would stab a 15-year-old girl with a knife. Not the greatest start to your fresh, newlywed marriage.
Yeah, that's not the best way to start it off on a good foot, It kind of might embark in some trust issues early on.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Possibly.
I don't trust him a
when
little
you
bit.
learn the details, of this stabbing too, it's pretty absurd. So he starts going on dates with this 15-year-old girl while he's just been married.
Got married.
They go out. Yeah. And so on this particular day, they went to a park and they were sitting under a tree, and he just pulled out a knife and stabbed her in the stomach out of nowhere. And his explanation to her was, I just can't trust you anymore. She responded by saying, Dayton, I love you. And at which point he did an impromptu marriage proposal to her with a knife sticking in her stomach.
Okay.
He then took her to the hospital and made her promise to say that she had stabbed herself. And this all spawned from, he felt that she wasn't showing enough affection towards him that day. He'd picked her up and she was kind of cold toward him that day. So naturally, sitting
my
under a tree,
God.
you stab her in the stomach,
Right. I'm sorry. I thought you didn't love me anymore, so I was just going to kill you. Oh, but you do.
Right.
Oh,
And
well, in that
but then when
case,
you said you
wanna
loved
get
me,
married?
it made me feel like an ass. I was kind of like,
Yeah.
oh man, what'd I do that for?
Right. I mean, I love you too. Do you want to get married, or that'll teach you to give me the cold
Jesus.
shoulder.
Right.
Damn. Savage.
So, and she actually listened to him when he told her, like, just tell the authorities that you stabbed yourself. And she would try to tell them this, and they weren't buying it. And eventually she would tell the truth that Dayton had stabbed her, and he would be charged with first-degree assault and quickly released on bail. It's amazing how many chances this guy gets.
Yeah,
how much
that's what
freedom
I'm
he gets
saying.
for these unbelievably violent assaults on women that
It's
he does
bold,
over and over again. And he keeps
blatant
getting
assaults.
out. For real.
I mean, the legal system in this case is just as much to blame for these some of these victims, because
You
so
knew what
many
you had
chances.
here. This guy was not going to stop. Like he just kept raping and violently assaulting women, and they kept being like, "Oh, he's a changed man. He's better. You can let him go." Just because he was smart enough to convince mental institutions and whatnot that he had been repaired, that he was good,
and he looked
acting on his best
non-threatening.
behavior.
He looked
Yeah,
non-threatening.
he kind of looked. Younger pictures of him look a little bit like Billy Bob Thornton. I thought if you were gonna if Billy Bob wasn't so old now, you could have you missed your chance, but you could have made a movie on Dayton Leroy Rogers and had Billy Bob play him.
Yeah,
Maybe like 10, 15 years ago.
that would have been good too. That would have been good.
For sure. And you could see Billy Bob being that, he could play that character
Oh,
perfectly,
God,
where it's
yeah.
like a normal, unassuming, kind of charming guy, and then just switches, flips a switch, and all of a sudden he's this demon.
Oh yeah, he would do that nice.
Oh, yeah. So in October of 1972, at the request of the district attorney, Dayton underwent his first psychiatric evaluation by Dr. J. Allen Cook, who decided that Dayton had no mental disease or defect, which meant that he committed the violent crime knowing what he was doing. And he would end up taking a plea deal down to second-degree assault and receive no prison time, only 4 years of probation. So
See, here we
you
go.
get married,
Another.
then you start dating a 15-year-old girl, and you stab her in the stomach, and then you just get some probation.
There you go.
Naturally.
That'll help it. That'll fix him right up.
She almost died, by the way.
Yeah.
That girl, Denise, almost died.
Wow. I'm sure he learned his lesson, though. I'm sure he's
Of
done
course.
with stabbing. So let's go
Of
ahead
course.
and wrap
It's
this
not
up.
like 6 months later, he took 2 young teen runaway girls into his home
Oh.
and began, having sex with them, too. So, yeah.
While his wife is living
But he
there.
actually did. Right. Yeah. So with his wife, he took in 2 young teen runaway girls 6 months after this incident, after getting out on probation. He began drinking more and being inappropriate with the girls, eventually regularly sleeping with one of them, which resulted in his wife leaving him and moving in with a friend. And of course, he was not going to accept that. His wife was not going to leave him just because he was, had brought 2 young teen girls in and started having sex with them and stuff. He was
Right.
her leaving him on those grounds is totally unacceptable. Forget the fact that he just stabbed a girl and gotten away with that one as well.
Right. Right.
Naturally, her leaving and going to a friend's house, he would show up to the house where she was staying at And there was a man there with which he broke into a fight with and beat up the guy and threatened to kill all of them. So
Wow.
Julie, out of fear, you have to imagine, returned home soon after that, probably fearing that he was going to show up and actually kill everyone there if she didn't come back.
Right. I wonder who the man was that she went and stayed with. Curious about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Dude, honestly, it could have been like a girlfriend of hers husband or something, you know?
Right.
Who knows? But
Yeah.
luckily for Julie, it wouldn't be long before Dayton would be back behind bars, because on August 1st, 1973, this guy's a ticking time bomb. It was just a matter of time.
Oh, yeah.
On August 1st, 1973, Dayton got drunk and attacked one of the two young girls, or both of them, sorry, attacked both of the two young girls with a beer bottle, severely injuring them. So they were still staying with him and his wife. He would end up fleeing the scene in his Camaro before losing control and crashing, where he was once again arrested.
He's so reckless and spontaneous. Like,
It's crazy, right?
if there's anybody who
I
is-
never heard anything in his childhood about him having brain trauma, but it almost seems like crazy that he didn't. You know,
So impulsive,
Maybe
right?
he did that. We don't. Yeah, the impulsive behavior is just.
Well, I mean, you don't know how many times he was smacked or hit in the head or punched by his father, you know, at a young
That's true.
age while his brain is still forming. You don't know, man. And then just the average childhood of a boy in the 50s and 60s was probably rough enough. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Let alone an abusive father. And then he had 8 other siblings too, you know, which he probably had some older brothers. So I don't know.
Yeah. An abusive father that combined that with the censorship and the guilt when it comes to your natural hormones and things like that as well, that made you feel like a piece of shit for thinking anything sexual growing up. And
Yeah, it can throw
that
you
can
over the
create
top.
quite a stew of confusion within a young mind. And then you start confusing sex with being bad, and then you can skew that into violence, which you see.
Right.
He mixed violence and sexual fantasies.
Right. And I think with sex and violence being both labeled as equally bad, you know, it's like then you think, well, I got to have sex, so I might as well have the violence with it. Right. Or maybe the
I'm
violence.
doing something bad already. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the point?
Difference?
What's the point? Right.
Yeah. So after the incident where he beat up the two young girls and crashed his car, he would be evaluated for a second time by a psychiatrist and finally appropriately labeled a sociopath with antisocial disorder. And the psychiatrist quoted saying, "He is a sexually dangerous person."
Yeah,
So
no
due to the
doubt.
diagnosis from this psychiatrist, Dayton, it's funny how these diagnoses, they worked for him most of the time. Like whether the last time, you know, he was found to not have any disorders, and he pled down. He got a plea deal to get second degree assault and basically walked. This time he gets the diagnosis of having these, you know, disorders that makes him dangerous.
Right.
And because of this, the judge finds him not guilty by reason of insanity.
Some bullshit.
And
They're
and
looking
ordered
for a
him
reason to
be-
let him off.
Yeah. So the judge orders him to be committed to the Oregon State Hospital in Salem. And this was in March of 1974. So while in Oregon State Hospital, Dayton tried to talk to his wife, but she informed him that she was filing for divorce. I think that was a smart move. Get the hell away from him while you can, while he's
Yeah.
locked away, and start anew. But he was able to successfully convince the people at the Oregon State Hospital that he just acted on his best behavior. He kept moving from like high security to medium to low security.
Oh, yeah.
And next thing you know, he would be formally released in December of the same year.
Wow.
So you look at his recent past, you know, he stabs a 15-year-old girl in the stomach. And then just months after that, he beats 2 young girls with a beer bottle severely and crashes his car drunk, and released the same year.
Yeah, he
Just
spent
keeps
9
getting
months
out.
in there. That's it.
Yeah. How much rehabilitation for this stuff could have happened during that time? And when immediately he was just being downgraded.
He was
For good
doing nothing
behavior.
but buying his time. That's all he was doing.
Yeah.
He was doing
I
exactly
feel like the
what he
most
needed to
dangerous
do.
people are the best at doing that, the best at convincing mental health professionals that they're normal. You know, they know human psychology maybe even better than the experts.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
They use that ability to prey on people by, you know, convincing them they're a good person, and then in a split second snapping on them and attacking them.
Yep, they
That's what he did to all these victims that he attacked.
That's right. They disarm people with it.
Yeah, and he did that. He used those same tactics to disarm the mental health professionals that were in Oregon State Hospital. You
Yes,
know,
he
he
did.
just convinced them that he was a normal, good guy.
Yep.
Doesn't show him the dark side, obviously. So 3 months later, he would meet Sherry Miller. He was now divorced, and he would marry her in October of 1975. And this would be the wife that he would be with through his murder spree that would occur over a 4-year span. Sherry Miller, we'll learn more about her. But in December of that same year, he would rape an 18-year-old girl and was indicted in January. He was allowed to remain free pending a May trial. Amazing to me. You just let this violent criminal just over and over. He's doing these heinous crimes, and you just let him keep being free to do it more. Mm-hmm. In this instance, the girl that he raped, he had picked her up while she was walking along the side of the road. It was raining out. She took the ride from this seemingly nice stranger, and he would take her to a secluded location where he would rape her multiple times. And at a certain point, when he was backing out of this area because it was raining, his car got stuck in mud. And that's how they were able to catch him.
He gets caught so much, man. It's like he almost got
crazy,
caught.
Right? It doesn't seem to matter. Yeah, it doesn't even seem to matter. He's like almost not even afraid to get caught at this point.
Why would he be? He hasn't been punished really since he was a kid. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny for someone who was so brutally punished and disciplined as a child in adulthood, just kept getting slaps on the wrist.
Keep getting slaps on the wrist.
So crazy.
December, indicted in January, and then allowed to be free pending a May trial. And then, of course, before that May trial would come, in February of 1976, he would rape one high school girl and threaten another with a knife, apologizing afterward. And he would plead innocent for reason of mental defect on this one. The two girls had skipped school and were walking down the street when Rogers saw them and convinced them to go with him. Quote, he was a good talker, and his method at the time was to pick up girls, particularly blonde girls. They got in the car with him. They went to get some beer. After drinking beer and smoking marijuana together, he took a paring knife from the glove box of the car, and he was driving and threatening the girls with it. He used a coat hanger to bind the girls' wrists and ankles before raping one of them while the other one was in the back seat, afraid, of course.
Jesus.
In May, he would be acquitted of the December rape charge. In June, his parole for the other knife attack was revoked. In August, he was acquitted for the latest rape charge, but was convicted of 2 counts of coercion and sentenced to 5 years.
Unbelievable.
So
you're missing the point.
Forget all of these rapes. He just gets coercion.
Don't worry about rape. Just
if you're confused on how this happens, we do have a quote from John L. Collins, who was the Yamhill County District Attorney at the time. He says, quote, he says, quote, this was a less enlightened time when juries often felt that if the woman or girl contributed to the rape in any way, they would not convict him. Mm-mm. In this case, he thinks it was because they drank beer and smoked marijuana with him. That made them obviously at fault for getting raped, you know.
Uh-huh. So he just coerced them to drink beer and marijuana. So that's what they charged him for. Man, you can rape whoever you want, but just don't go around coercing people. Oh, damn. Oh,
and it's not like he put a knife to their head, and he couldn't have made them do this as well.
Right. Oh yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Unbelievable. Just the age gap alone, though, should be enough to put all responsibility on him. He's picking up young teenage girls.
Yeah. Yeah, while being married and having a just absolutely despicably violent past as well, where you can see a pattern here.
Right.
This isn't his first offense here.
This is not hearsay. This is not she said. This is not a woman came forward, but we have no proof. No, they identify this person, multiple people on this account, 2 women, and then you can look into him, and there's a whole past. There's a whole history, and so many
He's not stopping. He was awaiting trial for a violent offense when he did this one, when he picked these 2 girls up and raped them. Literally awaiting trial, He just gotten out in January. This happens in February. He's got a trial coming in May.
Yep.
If anything, he sees the time ticking, and it's like, I've got to do more of this before I maybe end up in jail. So letting him out on bail is just an unbelievably bad idea. You had to set that bail so high that there was no way he was getting out before the trial.
I agree. And that's a good insight into the way he probably was thinking. You're right. That's the way I felt like too. I felt like he was like, there's no time.
He got out in January on bail, and then in February he does this. So he was wasting no time.
No time at all. I mean, any free time he had, he was going to commit one of these crimes.
Yeah, and the prosecutor knew what they had here. He said, quote, this man is an extreme danger to the community, particularly to young women. He is both sexually and physically violent and, without question, is a murder case looking for a place to happen. Nailed it on that.
Nailed it.
That's foreshadowing happening right there. Nonetheless, he still won parole after 17 months, was hauled back for another 10 months on charges of parole violation. He would end up being paroled in January of 1982, having served 5.5 years. 1 year later, his parole supervision was terminated, and he would be fully free.
Bullshit,
and this is around when his murder spree really begins. I think after spending those 5 years in prison, he knew damn well he wasn't going to stop raping girls, but I think he made a conscious decision that he was not going to let them live to tell the tale and get him locked up again.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, how bold do you feel now after having gone through all that and you still aren't in prison for life? Yep. I mean, you have to be such emboldened by this. You're like, okay, just those little things got me caught. Yeah, I can fix that.
So let's get some excerpts from the book that we got this week, Bloodlust. This gives you a real insight into this man's sickness. I think it was really well done by the author of this book. It says, it has been said that bloodlust is an aberration unique to the human animal. The aberration is clearly sexual violence in all evil. It rears its diabolical head when the host fails to achieve sexual gratification in any other way. As a result, many particular women and children who unwittingly come into contact with such an individual die needlessly and without mercy at his hands. Dayton Rogers, from his late 20s and into his early 30s, was fearsomely known to many of Portland, Oregon sex workers as Steve the Gambler, and he had been afflicted by bloodlust since his late teens, perhaps longer. It usually materialized in the form of a headache, inflicting him with a splitting, blinding white pain, and perhaps he always had subconsciously been aware that only the sight of another's pain, the sounds of her anguish, or ultimately the spilling of her blood would relieve his own suffering. When the headaches began, the only way to make them go away was to let his dark side fully emerge. Quote, Dayton seems personable enough on the surface as long as he wasn't in the midst of one of his mood swings. He was well known in the small communities of Woodburn and Canby, and people seemed to like him. A mechanic by trade, a skill he had learned in prison, Dayton ran a small successful engine repair business, was married, and had an 18-month-old boy who was a mirror image of himself. Few people saw the evil that lay beneath the thin veneer, and many of those who were unlucky enough to witness his dark side firsthand did not live to talk about it. Unbelievable explanation in that book.
That's a great summary right there.
Of what you're dealing with here.
That encapsulates.
And over the next 5.5 years, from 1982 to the summer of 1987, Dayton would kill nearly 10 women and leave their bodies in the Molalla Forest, all together in a small area that he revisited regularly. We know this because there was small Smirnoff vodka bottles, the little mini, like hotel-sized bottles strewn about, and that was his calling card. Was he liked screwdrivers, and he would only bottle little miniatures, and that was one of the things that helped connect him to these bodies that were strewn out there. So Dayton would troll the seedy drags of Portland late at night while his wife slept. He claimed that he was working at his shop during the absences, which ranged from a few hours to all night, and his wife Sherry saw little reason at first to doubt him. When she would call to check up on him in the early evening, he usually answered the telephone. On the occasions that he didn't, he always had an excuse. He would explain that he had been in the middle of a project and he didn't want to leave to pick up the phone. Or, more commonly, he would tell Sherry that he had gone out to get coffee, perhaps a bite to eat, anything that would convince her he was only taking a break to get away from the shop for a while. Often, however, he waited until it was very late, until he was very certain that Sherry was in bed and fast asleep before beginning the prowl.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, he had so much freedom owning his own business here.
Yeah, and his wife, she was devoutly religious and somewhat naive. She always trusted her husband and rarely questioned his activities as well. So,
and I think
that's the way he liked it, not being questioned.
And I think his shop was actually a small engine repair shop, right? I think he was actually like a lawnmower mechanic, not a car mechanic. And I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, sure. It was. I think it was a small engine repair shop. So maybe. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. I just assumed it was a car repair shop.
When they say small engine, they're not saying that the building is small. They're saying it's small engines that he worked on. Yeah. And so like with lawnmower business like that, you kind of work on your own hours. Any small engine shop I've ever been to, you always leave your lawnmower. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a car that needs an oil change, needs to be done that day. Right. So you have a lot of leeway. You have all these projects just sitting around a small warehouse. And I could see how you could have so much freedom. You could work late into the night, or you could pretend like you're working late into the night. It really was the perfect opportunity. And you got to know a lot of the community as well. Everybody has a lawnmower or a leaf blower or a weed eater, that needs a little work from time to time. And you're the friendly neighborhood repairman,
Yep. Yeah. So let's get to a specific day, and this is the crime that kind of does him in here. On August 6th, 1987, Dayton left his assistant in charge of the shop and drove to the liquor store at the North Park Plaza in Woodburn. He grabbed more vodka miniatures from the liquor store before driving home to have dinner with Sherry and his son. He told her that he had to go to the shop to work very late, perhaps into the early mornings, to catch up on some overdue work. As usual, she didn't protest. Half an hour later, Dayton was gone. He stopped off at his shop. He had a couple more drinks and tinkered with some of the easier repair projects. Shortly after midnight, he changed into his stepping out clothes, his going out to pick up sex worker clothes that he kept inside his special closet, and waited inside the shop a little longer until he was certain that Sherry had gone to bed. By about 12:30 a.m., he was headed toward Portland. So this was now into August 7th, having been past midnight.
Right.
And by 1 a.m., he was back on Union Avenue, which was known as Portland's Prostitute Row. After a short cruise, he stopped a blonde near the corner of Northeast Union Avenue, recognized her as he had picked her up before during Portland's 1987 Rose Festival. She recognized him as well as a former customer and didn't hesitate to get in. She must not have gotten him on one of his nights where he snapped. He's almost like a damn werewolf. Like he would just snap.
Yeah, or
out of nowhere. He'd seem totally normal and get them at ease, and then boom.
Yeah, that's true.
Try to tie their wrists up.
And he knew that too. He
them.
knew that he had been with her before, so he was like, "Oh, she's gonna trust me," you know. I mean, we've already done this before, so that's brutal.
Yeah. And no one except for Dayton knows the precise details of what happened from 1 to 3 a.m. that night. But sometime prior to 3 a.m., they pulled into the parking lot of a Denny's restaurant in Oak Grove, a suburb of Portland. With the taverns and bars having just closed, business was brisk there, and it was only the restaurant open in the area at the time of the morning. Michael Fielding, who was 32, lived in an apartment nearby, had gone to bed a couple hours earlier and was sleeping soundly when he heard the sudden muffled screams of a woman in intense pain. "Help me," screamed the woman. "Please help me. Rape. I'm being raped." As Field climbed out of bed and headed for the window that overlooked the parking lot, the screams became louder. He arrived at the window to see a man run beneath the streetlight. Moments earlier, James Dalkey, 50 years old, had arrived at the Denny's. He was alone as he parked his van and walked toward the restaurant. He heard the woman yelling and screaming as well, but couldn't quite make out what she was saying. But he could see two human forms in the parking lot in the direction from where the screams had come, and although it was dark, he could see two people, a man and a woman, and the woman they appeared to be struggling with each other. There, near the middle of the parking lot, lay a completely naked woman. A man was kneeling over her. Charles Gates, a handicapped customer, had just arrived and barely situated himself in his wheelchair when he heard the screams. Already being outside in the parking lot, he was on his way over to the woman, as was Dalkey. When the man kneeling over the woman saw Dalkey and Gates approaching, he jumped to his feet and ran in the opposite direction. When they reached the woman, they saw that she had many stab wounds and was not breathing. Experienced in first aid and emergency medical treatment, Gates noted she was not breathing and immediately began CPR, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And as a crowd gathered, Dalkey instructed the restaurant personnel to call medical and police help. So a couple of minutes later, Dalkey again spotted the man he'd seen only minutes before kneeling over the nude woman. The man was coming around the side of the building adjacent to the restaurant and was headed for a small foreign pickup located nearby. That's him. That's the son of a motherfucker. I love that line.
That's like
a lot of this is also from the book Bloodlust.
They're
by
so
the way.
mad they forgot how to cuss.
If this doesn't sound like my writing, a lot of this is from the book Bloodlust directly.
Yeah. What's up, creepers? Y'all know I'm not a big video game guy, but I do enjoy a good puzzle from time to time. You know, something that gives me a good challenge, wakes up the old brain and gets it moving. Enter Best Fiends into my life, and I'm borderline obsessed. With over 1 million downloads, this casual mobile puzzle game is just what I needed to keep my brain active and take my mind off the stresses of everyday life. And I know what you're thinking, and this is more than just smashing candy, okay? Best Fiends has thousands of puzzles to solve, with new updates all the time, not to mention the adorable characters you'll unlock and level up along the way. Maybe you were like me, discouraged about finding a new game that would stimulate your mind and stand out from the pack. If that's the case, give Best Fiends a try. Download the 5-star rated puzzle game Best Fiends for free today on the App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
So by the time the two other bystanders, Stan and Richard Bergio, had rushed over to see what was happening after learning of the incident, they ran for their own vehicles and attempted to block off the exits in the parking lot so that the man couldn't get away. However, the man drove right over the sidewalk Bergio determined not to let the guy get away and sped out of the parking lot in his own car in hot pursuit of the pickup. He chased the pickup through Oak Grove and into nearby Gladstone, at times reaching speeds of over 100 miles an hour. And he would eventually get close enough to pick up the copy of the driver's license plate. Satisfied that he had done all he could, he gave up the chase and went back to the crime scene where he found a team of Clackamas County Sheriff's deputies. The woman was loaded into an ambulance and taken to the hospital in Portland, where she was pronounced dead on arrival.
Wow.
No identification, either in clothing or in the parking lot, was found, but after additional searching, deputies found a double-length pair of shoelaces tied together with loops at both ends, prompting some to speculate the woman had been hogtied at one point. A short time later, detectives John Turner and Mike Machado arrived at the scene. After being briefed on the morning's events, Turner took the license plate provided from Richard Bergio and ran it. So this man's heroic actions of chasing this perpetrator and getting his license plate made all the difference.
And also the man in the wheelchair too, man. He needs some praises for this as well.
For sure.
Rolling out there, performing CPR, for acting. It's a harder thing to do than what people think. To jump into action when you just seen a violent attack. Most people want to turn the other way or not get involved. And this guy did all he could to save this woman's life, even though she was covered in blood. You know, that can't go without saying. That's pretty impressive.
You know, of all places to pull into in the middle of the night, most businesses were closed. You pull into a Denny's that's open all the time. Bad decision.
Pull into a 24-hour Denny's. That's what I'm talking about. This guy is blatantly bold or stupid. Like, he's one or the other.
Right.
It's amazing that he even got this far.
Right. Yeah, and this victim, it makes you wonder. She was obviously not cool with going to a secluded area on this evening for whatever reason, and maybe because they had a relationship, they'd gone together before. Dayton was like, we don't have to go to my secluded forest area this time, or whatever it was. Thankfully, because she would just have been another one in that dump site that night. She must have somehow convinced him that she wanted to make this quick, that she had to get going, or whatever it was. But something happened that prevented him from going to his normal secluded area to do these crimes.
It is weird that he went to that extent right there in the middle of the alley. You know, it's so strange with street lights everywhere and people around, and like you said, near an open.
Well, she tried to get out and run, and he ended up tackling her and stabbing her there in the parking lot.
But it's just surprising that he wouldn't try to just tie her up or knock her unconscious. You know what I mean? Instead of but it just goes to show how much this bloodlust takes over. You know, at least that's what he says. You know, maybe he was in the midst of a blinding, what did you say? A blinding, raging headache. And
the book explains some of these situations in that he was conflicting with himself. Whereas there was moments where he'd be like, I have to kill you. And then he'd be like, no, I'm going to let you go. He was back and forth on this shit. And some of the surviving victims, the rape victims, said that there was moments where he said he was going to kill me. And then I was able to change his mind one way or another. He was just back and forth, almost like a split personality.
Yeah, you mean the same guy that stabs a 15-year-old in the stomach and then asks her to marry him? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
He's been like this his whole life.
Precisely. So there may have been a moment where he was like, you know what, I'm going to take you back to Portland and drop you off. And then he changed his mind midway there, pulled it in the parking lot. She tried to get out and run, and he's in this blind rage and stabs her right there.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He took that as an insult.
So
he took that as the biggest insult. You just declined his advances.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You just insulted him, and now he feels like he's not going to get his sexual pleasures. And I think that just fuels the rage more than anything. Just like the girl that he stabbed, she was, quote unquote, not giving him as much attention that day. Mm-hmm. And there you go. It just led to a overboiling point, I guess. Pathetic.
Yeah. So Detective John Turner ran the license plate number that was provided by Richard Bergio, and minutes later they learned that the pickup's registered owner was 33-year-old Dayton Leroy Rogers, whose address was about 20 miles south of the crime scene. Turner and a team of deputies reached Rogers' home at approximately 5 a.m., and they saw no sign of the pickup on the property, and they were subsequently told by a relative that Rogers was not home, that he could likely be found at his auto repair shop in Woodburn. So this must have been his wife that told him this information. It was 5:35 a.m. when Detective Turner arrived at Rogers' shop. A man with bloodshot eyes answered the door, smelling of alcohol, and identified himself as Dayton Rogers. After Turner told Rogers that he and the deputies were at part of a homicide investigation, Rogers allowed them inside. When asked, Rogers told the detectives that he had been at the shop all night and was drinking bourbon and strawberry mixers. Mind if I take a look around? Asked Turner. Go ahead and search the place, said Rogers. Search the truck, too, if you want.
There you go.
Rogers told the detective Rogers told the detective that his pickup truck had been at the shop all night. Turner shot him a dubious glance, walked over to the truck, and raised the hood. Been here all night, huh? Asked Turner as he attempted to place his hand on the engine's valve cover, which was too hot to touch.
That's exactly what I would have done.
You haven't gone out at all, have you?
That's the first thing I would have thought. I've been like, let's just go see if the truck's hot. Oh, wow, it is. Check that out.
Yep. Yeah, and you're running an engine repair shop here. You can't think that we think you're that stupid for real.
Seriously.
Rogers or somebody had recently run the engine hard, thought Turner as he pulled his hand away from the hot engine. What happened to your hand? Asked Turner, observing that Rogers' right hand was bandaged. Cut yourself? Rogers explained that he'd been using a hacksaw a few hours earlier, and it suddenly slipped and cut his hand. Turner asked if he had left the shop for first aid, and Rogers responded that he had gone to the Willamette Falls Hospital in Oregon City that same morning to have the wound treated.
Mm-hmm. Which he did.
So he's already mixing up his stories here. He'd been there working on engines all night. Now suddenly he's been at the hospital as well. His truck hasn't been moved, but it's hot. It's just these detectives are slipping him up on all kinds of shit in his story.
I think he thought they were just going to check the inside of the truck for like evidence of the homicide, you know. But he messed up.
To detectives, there was no doubt that Rogers picked up was the one that was seen fleeing the scene at the crime. It matched in appearance, and the license plate ID was exactly the same. Rogers was arrested a few minutes later and taken to jail in Oregon City, where he was held on suspicion of murder. Meanwhile, the detectives identified the dead woman as a 25-year-old named Jennifer Lisa Smith, who was a mother of two. An additional background on Smith revealed that she had an arrest record for prostitution and indecent exposure. Background on Rogers revealed that he was no stranger of law enforcement either, as we know. He had quite an extensive violent past.
Right.
And as the detectives probed deeper into his background, they learned that he had been in and out of jail for a variety of reasons, including rape, parole, and probation violations, and for kidnapping a local sex worker. All in all, they learned that Rogers had spent 27 months in Oregon prisons before his parole was formally terminated in 1983. Meanwhile, acting out on a tip of one of Rogers' relatives, so somebody that worked at the shop with him, I think it was like his father-in-law or something, worked at the engine repair shop, had seen him putting things in the wood-burning stove within the shop.
Uh-oh.
And basically he tipped off police that, hey, you might want to look through that to see what you can find. So they would return to the auto repair shop, where they would sift through the ashes in the wood stove in Rogers' office. There they found what appeared to be remnants of a burned tennis shoe. Now, part of the murder scene was the victim from the Denny's parking lot. She only had one shoe. So this is a connected piece here, a piece of the puzzle that was missing that they found in his wood-burning stove.
And there were shoelaces at the crime scene as well.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if these shoes were missing laces or whatnot. I mean,
they were tied into loops to bound her. An analysis later determined that metal parts found in the wood stove closely matched metal parts of the shoe that was discovered in the parking lot where Jennifer Smith was murdered. They also found pieces of colored glass, rhinestones, and star-shaped grommets inside the stove. Their sources were unknown at the time. Rogers' truck had been impounded shortly after his arrest, and after warrants had been obtained, it was carefully searched for evidence. There was blood inside the cab of the pickup, numerous knife cuts on the dashboards, upholstery, ceiling, and passenger door. God, that's dark.
Yeah, it is.
Like, cuts all over the upholstery of the truck. Like, how violently was he stabbing at her? And now that we know how many other victims there were, these stabs and slashes in the truck could have been from other victims as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It definitely was, man. I mean, multiple cuts and because listen, if they were fresh cuts and fresh blood, I don't think he would have been as bold to be like, search the truck.
Right.
I think a lot of that was...
Yeah, he'd obviously taken a few minutes to clean up the truck before trying to act normal in his repair shop.
He tried, you know.
Yeah. They also found a single fingerprint matching that of Jennifer Smith's right finger out on the outside handle of the passenger door. He's toast at this point on this murder. Yeah. Next, in their efforts to build a stronger case against him, the detectives went to the hospital to see how much of the suspect's story about his wounded hand was true. After questioning the emergency room doctor who had attended to the wounds, the detectives learned that the cuts were not jagged as if they had been from a hacksaw blade. They had been smooth and clean, more like wounds that would have been caused by a knife blade. And because Jennifer Smith was a known sex worker and because of Rogers' continued interest in them, detectives hit Portland streets to interview as many as they could, focusing their attention on those who knew Jennifer. Not surprisingly, the detectives found several who knew Rogers. Many of them identified Rogers to talk to detectives and identified him from a photo layout. Several said they told him his name was Steve. As we mentioned earlier, that's what he told these sex workers that he would frequent.
Yeah.
One of them even said that they saw Jennifer Smith walk toward his pickup as if to get inside 3 hours before she was found murdered.
Oh, that's damning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe they waited this long to talk to these sex workers, though. I mean, I get it. I know why. Obvious reasons. They don't want to go down there. They don't think they're important. But I mean, this could have blew this case open a long time ago. They knew about Steve. This guy Steve, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. They were onto him.
They'd locked him up on prior occasions, and he just kept getting out. And it was only a matter of time before he took it to the next level and started murdering.
Yep.
According to the sex workers they talked to, he'd always had the girls completely undressed, after which he bound their hands and feet at the wrists and ankles with a rope, dog collars, wire, nylon stockings, shoelaces, and the like, anything that would hold their arms and feet securely in place. But many said that Rogers went far beyond bondage, subjecting them to intense physical pain, torture, and even mutilation. Many of these women were scarred from Leroy Rogers. They literally had bite mark scars and cut scars and things like that from him, and had warned other sex workers about what you would be getting into if you got into his vehicle. One even told the detectives that Rogers had a foot fetish and found women's arches sexually arousing. An interesting point the detectives noticed, considering that Jennifer Smith was barefoot when her body was found. They also said that he usually bought vodka in the individual servings, 1.5 ounce bottles, those like served on airlines. One of the women said that he had subjected her to so much pain during a 6-hour ordeal that she'd asked him to kill her.
Wow.
And yet they were still too afraid to go to authorities about this guy. What does that say?
That's all I could think when I was hearing this testimony.
About priorities of law enforcement. Like they're more worried that they're going to get in trouble, which was more likely to happen.
Yes.
They were going to get arrested for prostitution as opposed to taking down a violent sex offender.
A woman who was tortured so much that she wanted to die was afraid to go to the police.
Is still too afraid to go to
That tells you
the
everything
cops.
you need to know right there. That's so sad.
So from the autopsy of Jennifer Smith's body, the deputy state medical examiner determined that there were at least 11 knife wounds to the victim's body, 10 of which were very deep. Quote, there were other wounds, said Dr. Gunson, including 2 quarter-inch wide bruises on both wrists. These bruises indicated that she had been tied up, perhaps with shoelaces like found at the scene. After the investigators presented their case to the Clackamas County grand jury, Dayton Rogers was indicted on charges of aggravated murder in the death of Jennifer Smith. The indictment alleged that he murdered her during the course of rape, kidnapping, sexual abuse, and torture. It also alleged that Rogers killed Smith to cover up the other crimes. Rogers retained attorney Arthur B. Noss in Oregon City to represent him, and he pleaded innocent of the charges and was held without bail. Thankfully. Finally held without bail, right?
You sure you don't want to let him go on one more vacation? Huh?
Yeah, let's let him go and kill another one before the trial comes.
One more little
Let's do
trip
that.
to the Oregon forest there.
All
Let
right.
him go camping.
He's probably just going to learn his lesson and not do anything
You know
else.
what? Let's just
most
acquit him of
likely.
all this. He's just a coercer anyways.
I got a lawnmower that needs to be
Yeah.
repaired. I don't know about this.
He's just so good with motors.
Right.
Oh, geez.
In the meantime, on Monday, my grass is really overgrown. I don't know how much longer I can take this. In the meantime, on Monday, August 31st, Everett Banyard, a 46-year-old crossbow hunter in pursuit of prey on a private $90,000 acre timber farm southeast of Molalla, Oregon, nearly stumbled over the nude, partially buried body of a young woman, and this is where the cluster dump site was discovered.
Yes.
And it's crazy timing because he's awaiting trial. He's not getting bail this time. He's awaiting a murder trial for this woman that he had just killed. And just a couple months after this, the dump site is found.
And the prosecution is doing backflips. They're like, you got to be kidding me. Like once,
Well, they don't
once
know
they
yet.
hear about
It takes the detective's discovery of his mini vodka bottles at the scene of all these bodies that makes the connection.
Right.
So the body that was stumbled across by Everett Banyard was in an advanced state of decomposition and was partially covered with brush. The hunter left the forest as quickly as possible and reported his find to the Clackamas County authorities. When investigators arrived at the remote site, a recreation area near the Molalla River, the bow hunter led them up an old dirt logging road through the rugged forest, mixed with evergreens and deciduous trees to a nearly vertical slope where he discovered the body. Even though it was a little difficult to get to, the investigators had no trouble finding the corpse, and one thing was certain: she was a murder victim. Deputies were posted nearby to protect the scene because this was late at night when they got up there and discovered the first body.
Right.
So they kept deputies posted up until they could have criminalists arrive the next morning. And shortly after a search for evidence began the next day, searchers found 2 more decaying bodies within 50 feet of each other in the same general area, and the scene appeared to them to be a cluster dump similar to those used by Gary Ridgway. Unsure of what they were dealing with here, investigators temporarily halted the search while a tracking dog was brought in to assist the search for more bodies. And over the next 5 days, a total of 7 female corpses were brought down from the forest ridge. Wow. All were nude when found, and all bore signs of stabbing, torture, and mutilation. Some of the victims' feet had been crudely removed at the ankle with what appeared to be a blade with a serrated edge, like that of a hacksaw.
And we know why he did that. The foot fetish, right? I mean, I wonder what he did with these feet.
Right. I wonder the same thing. Like, where
are they?
Those? Did they end up in his wood stove at some point, or?
I bet he kept them. I mean, why cut them off?
Just throw them out the window somewhere.
Why cut them off
when he was done with them?
Well, maybe to use them for a little while longer.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
God.
One victim's foot had been cut approximately 2/3 of the way through the bone, with the remainder broken off. This prompted detectives to consider that the perpetrator had sawed those women's feet off while they were still alive and conscious in an attempt to elicit additional pain and suffering. That's fucking dark to consider.
Yes, it is. But,
oh my
but
God.
Not crazy. Not with this guy.
No, not from what we know from living witnesses
Right.
that survived his crimes. I mean, he got off on inflicting pain. Like, the more they screamed, the more he was excited by it.
That's not off base.
Ugh. That's what I'm saying. Like, when I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I would almost rather be in the custody of Ted Bundy than this guy. Like, as far as what you're going to go through.
Yeah.
Both were monsters, but man, this guy.
Yeah, he's brutal on another level.
Absolutely loved to torture.
Yeah, he got off on the torture, almost Bob Berdella style.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, very similar. Each of the victims were lying in varying degrees of decomposition, but 2 were markedly more advanced, having been there considerably longer than the others. Despite the striking similarities between the female victims in the Molalla Forest slope and Jennifer Smith, nudity, signs of stabbing, torture, mutilation, the detectives didn't, at least at first, focus on Dayton Leroy Rogers as a possible suspect. He was in jail, charged with the murder of Jennifer Smith. However, the detective Turner walked around the forest site as he soon spotted miniature vodka bottles, an old package that had been purchased in, and disposable orange juice bottles, the same kind found in the back of Dayton Rogers' pickup. And he also remembered many of the sex workers they had talked to, saying that typically he would pick them up, then he would stop at the liquor store and pick up those miniature vodka bottles as well as little bottles of orange juice because he loved screwdrivers.
Right.
And so this was just an immediate, light bulb goes on in this detective's head. He's like, oh, Dayton, I've got
Instant
you now,
connection.
motherfucker.
Yep.
As a result, it didn't take long for Turner to begin focusing on Dayton Rogers as the prime suspect in the Molalla Forest murders. He also reasoned that when all was said and done, many, if not most, of the Molalla Forest victims would turn out to have a history of prostitution arrests. The dead, it turned out, were identified over the next several months as Lisa Marie Mock, 23 years old, Maureen Ann Hodges, who was 26, Christine Lotus Adams, who was 35, Nandis K. Cervantes, a.k.a. Nani K. Alston, who was 26, Ratha Giles, who was 16, and Cynthia Diane DeVore, who was 21. One victim remains unidentified, and just as Turner had figured, most of the victims had worked either as sex workers at the time of their deaths or they had arrest records for prior prostitution offenses. Some were heroin addicts. Only one had no links to prostitution or drugs.
Yeah.
So his suspicions were correct in that this was the type of person that Dayton had been targeting. So everything is matching up as far as Dayton.
Yep.
At the time of the gruesome discovery in the Molalla Forest, the investigators wouldn't say what they had for evidence against him. However, one source close to the investigation maintained that he was the prime suspect in the forest murders, and they had enough evidence to bring him to trial in those killings, but they wanted to wait and see how the trial for Jennifer Smith turned out before charging him with the Molalla Forest murders.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, that makes sense. Get him, let's see if he gets convicted for the Jennifer Smith murder, there was so much evidence, it would be unbelievable if he somehow was found innocent of that one.
Right.
So once they have him put away for that one, then they can really build their case.
Let's take our time
regarding the Molalla Forest murders. So let's go through the first trial real quick. At Rogers' trial, which began in February of 1988, the deputy DA told the jury that Rogers murdered Jennifer Smith by design, following a pattern he'd established with sex workers. He called Rogers a vicious predator who killed for sexual thrill. You'll find that the reason he went to downtown Portland was to satisfy what you'll find to be his bizarre sexual appetite. You'll find that his sexual appetite included bondage, masturbation, and intent to inflict intense physical pain. Rogers' attorney told jurors that they would not like his client, but insisted they were there to decide whether Mr. Rogers did what was tantamount to a criminal act and not to judge his sexual amours. He admitted that Rogers killed Jennifer Smith, but contended he did so in self-defense.
Oh, God.
So even his own defense attorney saying, you're not going to like him. Yes, he killed her, but
you're not going to like him.
That's not a good start.
Like him. I was texting somebody. He was trying to talk to me the other day. He literally stabbed me in the arm. You're not going to like him.
My skin crawls when I'm within 5 feet of the son of a bitch.
This guy.
But just give him an open mind.
Well,
okay?
what they got? I mean, this guy's a son of a motherfucker. But I mean,
right?
It's my favorite line so far.
Funny as fuck. Right. So his defense claimed that Smith spotted more than $200 in Rogers' wallet when they stopped at the convenience store to buy the orange juice, and she decided to rob the defendant at knife point. Later, when Rogers got out of the truck to pee, Smith pulled a knife from the glove department and brought it close to Rogers' throat and demanded his wallet. A struggle followed and turned into a wrestling match for the knife, in which Jennifer Smith was stabbed several times and killed purely by accident.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Where's Eileen Wuornos when you need her, right? Damn.
Right.
Why couldn't one of these serial killers that picked up prostitutes picked up Eileen, you know? That would have been some sweet justice.
Right. It's like that meme, like what are the odds 2 serial killers in the same car at the same time?
She pulls out
and then Eileen just pulls out a fucking pistol and pew, I like my odds, bitch.
Right. That's what he needed.
That would have been sweet justice if she had been one of the ones that he picked up.
Seriously.
Makes you wonder. You know, Eileen obviously was a serial killer herself, but how many of the men she picked up that she killed were victims, but also maybe they were serial. They probably statistically there might have been a few sick sons of bitches that she picked up that she killed that had killed women or assaulted them or were around the corner from doing so.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, right? I mean, you would have to imagine that
we're not going to speak to any specific victims she killed, but I mean, it's a possibility that a couple of them might have either been already or were about to be.
Exactly.
Killers
and I'm sure
themselves.
she took certain Johns as well. I'm sure it wasn't just anybody. Maybe she was the one that they like, you know, if she stood with other girls, you know, on a certain area or whatever, maybe she was the one. She was like, "Oh, I'll take this guy. I'll take this one."
Which guy is the
right? It's like,
Trucker Steve.
Oh, this guy tried to stab you.
Which one's the one that's abusing you?
Oh, this guy tried to stab you last time. Eileen, this dude, he wants to see you.
Right. Oh, have I got a great woman for you to see tonight?
Oh,
you're gonna have so much fun with her.
You guys gonna hit it off. Here she is.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so during the trial, several of Dayton's former sexual assault victims took the stand and told their tales, and the prosecution presented the evidence also that Jennifer Smith was tortured, which really put a monkey wrench in the old theory that she was acting in self-defense when you look at the evidence that shows she was tortured.
Or that Dayton was acting in self-defense.
Quote, no one wants Dayton Leroy Rogers released, Prosecutor Noss had said only minutes before the jury left the courtroom to decide his client's fate. I don't want him released. You don't want him released. I question whether Mr. Rogers himself even wants to be released. What is needed is permanent isolation of this man. In his fantasy land, he's become a sexual monster you've heard about from these girls. He developed and nurtured these feelings into a ritual. It's a pattern you can't ignore. He's a sick man. But do we kill him? Do we have a death sentence for people who are as sick as depraved as this? Continued Noss. Look at the evidence. After the killing of Mrs. Smith, he goes back to work and thinks about going to a coffee shop. The state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he's a sick man. But, argued Noss, he doesn't deserve the death sentence. 4 hours later, the 12 jurors returned and announced that they had unanimously voted that the murder of Jenny Smith was deliberate. They also unanimously voted that Jenny's murder was an unreasonable response to any provocation from the victim. However, after one juror adamantly opposed the death penalty, all 12 agreed that Rogers would not pose a continued threat to society because he would be imprisoned for life. And Judge Gilroy immediately sentenced Dayton to life in prison. They would, however, later regret their decision when they learned that life in Oregon didn't necessarily mean that he couldn't get out at some point. They were under the impression that that meant he would die in prison, but there was still a chance after this murder sentencing when it comes to Jennifer Smith that he could see the light of day again.
Right.
And until they learned that there was another huge trial coming for the Molalla Forest murders, these jurors would be nervous about their decision not giving him the death sentence for the fact that he might get out. But then word would get out that there was another big trial coming out in which he would be convicted of many more murders. And then they kind of breathed a sigh of relief after that.
Right.
So the second trial would occur, and for the next 2 months, Turner and his colleagues worked closely with the DA's office and presented the worst serial murder case in Oregon's history to a grand jury. And that's saying a lot when you consider the other people that have worked in, the other serial killers that have worked in Oregon.
Yeah, seriously. I don't even know if you can call it the worst, but it's, I mean,
Right.
It's definitely bad. It's definitely one of the worst, for sure.
So on May 4th, 1988, Dayton was indicted on several charges of aggravated murder under various theories of law for the deaths of Retha Giles, Lisa Mock, Nani Cervantes, Cynthia DeVore, Christine Adams, and Maureen Hodges. He was not charged in the death of the unidentified victim, although the investigators were certain that he had murdered her too. As before, he pleaded innocent. Jury selection, this part is so fucking great to me. It gets an all-female jury. Jury selection, which began on February 6, 1989, took nearly 2 months to complete. Ironically, considering the types of crimes Dayton was being charged with committing, an all-woman panel of 12 was seated, with an additional female as an alternate.
His defense attorney is garbage. Absolute garbage. I would fire that guy.
Right.
Like, so, I mean, I'm glad he went away, obviously. But, man, that defense attorney was Listen, I don't like this guy. You don't like this guy. Like, can we just put this guy away? I'm tired of working with him.
Can we just get a panel of all women to
please.
judge him, please?
Whatever you want to do, prosecution, I'm down.
Right. When the trial finally opened on March 30th, 1989, the prosecutor outlined his case for jurors, contending that a knife identical to the one that was used to kill Jenny Smith was found near the Molalla Forest victims' bodies. Man, could he have done more connecting of himself to all of these crimes?
I don't think so.
The vodka bottles, the same knife being used.
He didn't try not to. That's what I'm saying. Like, he wasn't very smart. He really wasn't. He was just impulsive.
Is what they're saying. This is amazing to me. So he commits this crime against Jennifer Smith in the Denny's parking lot. He then flees there, goes back to his cluster dump site, and throws the knife to where the bodies are, connecting himself even more.
Why?
You know, there's already the vodka bottles there.
Yeah.
But my God, they're gonna find you guilty of the Jennifer Smith one. Obviously, you've been seen. Your truck's license plate's been taken. So now let's go ahead and connect myself to the other 7 or 8 people I've killed in the woods too by taking that knife I killed Jennifer Smith with and putting it there.
Maybe.
Great idea.
Maybe he was doing it on purpose. He was like, I'm definitely gone. I might as well go in as a monster so people will at least fear me or something.
I don't know, but he had his chance to talk and like confess to those other murders, and he never did.
That's true. That's true.
Like he never talked. So I don't know if it's about that. Maybe he's just stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Maybe he just thought that dump site was just not going to be found. You know?
Yeah. Maybe. So the prosecutor also described the torture, the grisly details of victims having their feet sawed or cut from their bodies, and how one, Nani Cervantes, had been eviscerated from a machete, having been inserted into the area of her vagina and subsequently sliced up the middle of the sternum. By the time he was finished with the presentation of what the jury would be considering, there was little left for the imagination. So he really put it all out there for these jury members. For the next 5 weeks, the jury had horrifying testimony from many of the women who Dayton Leroy Rogers had violated and tortured at one time or another, but who had miraculously survived. Each explained in graphic detail, one tearfully, to the atrocities that Dayton had committed against them. Bob Thompson, the Oregon State Police criminologist who worked closely on the case, explained how he found pieces of colored glass in Lisa Mock's hair, and how although he hadn't been able to determine the source, they were similar to glass found inside Dayton's wood stove. He also testified that hairs found inside Dayton's pickup were macroscopically and microscopically similar to the head hairs he compared to the remains of Lisa Mock, Nani Cervantes, and Cynthia DeVore. The prosecutor, in his closing argument, pointed at Dayton, quote, "This man is obsessed, totally consumed in a sexual way with women's feet and dominance. What is the ultimate act of dominance? It is to remove that foot. We submit that this is what happened in the Molalla Forest. If there is a signature to a crime under those circumstances, you can look at the signature. and see the identity of the killer. The evidence is the mark of Zorro. It is the signature. The defendant, ladies of the jury, not only committed these murders, but he might as well have written his name on the victims' corpses.
Damn. Not a
That
bad
is one
monologue.
hell of a ending statement right there.
That's damn good.
And
that's how you prosecute.
And on May 4th, after barely 6 hours of deliberation, the jury found Dayton guilty of aggravated murder on all counts. For the first time in public, Dayton, dressed in a conservative dark suit, displayed emotion by covering his head in his hands, shaking his head. He could be heard saying no repeatedly. On Wednesday, June 7th, 1989, after more than 17 hours of grueling deliberation, the jury voted unanimously that Dayton had murdered his victims deliberately and without reasonable, if any, provocation, and that he would be continuing threat to society, whether behind prison walls or on the outside. And Judge Bagley sentenced Dayton Leroy Rogers to death by lethal injection. Quote, "It was righteous justice," said Turner. Righteous in the sense that an all-female jury convicted him and decided his fate.
Yep. You know what? I bet the defense attorney thought, you got a better chance of women not giving you the death penalty. That's what he thought. Even though it's a man who's doing crimes against women, even though I think you still have a better chance of getting life in prison from a woman.
Just because generally more empathy or what?
I think so. And I think that's especially what they were thinking at the time. You know what I mean? They're thinking that women are, more nurturing, they're more forgiving, they're more motherly, maybe they have problem children, who knows? And maybe that was the defense's thinking.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, it looks like a really stupid move.
Well, I mean, because of course, almost no one ever gets killed when you put them on death row. They just sit around and If you want them to have a worse life, just put them in Gen Pop, and most likely they'll get taken out anyway. If they committed these heinous crimes against women, someone is going to take care of them behind bars.
Right. Exactly.
Aside from his testifying at his first trial, Dayton Leroy Rogers has not spoken to authorities since invoking his rights against self-incrimination shortly after the arrest of the murder of Jenny Smith. And again, when Detective Machado tried to question him about the Molalla Forest murders, he has shown no remorse for his crimes. He was sentenced to death 3 times, and 3 times Oregon's Supreme Court vacated the sentence of death and remanded the cases for a new trial. The first 2 Supreme Court decisions came in 1992 and 2000. In both instances, a jury imposed the death penalty. On October 11th, 2012, the Oregon Supreme Court vacated his latest death sentence and remanded the case for a new trial. This is so stupid.
Oh, I know.
Just give him a life sentence and be done with it. Stop with the trials to keep finding him, how much wasted money. It's just so dumb.
It is. It's our legal system, man. It's...
In November of 2015, a Clackamas County jury sentenced him to death for a 4th time.
Oh, here we go.
And according to his defense attorney, Rogers would have waived all future appeals and allocated his crimes in exchange for a true life sentence instead of the death penalty, which at this point should just happen because we keep having trials. He keeps getting the death penalty, and then they keep, the Supreme Court keeps vacating it just to have another trial to do. It's just a loop of wasted time and money for everyone.
Yep.
And at age 67, he currently sits on Oregon's death row at the Oregon State Penitentiary, where he will surely die of natural causes before ever being executed, in my opinion.
Oh, of course. Of course. I'm sure there's plenty of killers in front of him. But, yeah, like you said, he'll die in there. Probably while he's playing chess or some shit, living out the rest of his life. Son of a bitch.
Right.
Probably painting and learning literature.
Yeah.
That son of a bitch.
Someone on the internet will probably buy his artwork or his writings.
Yeah, exactly.
So he can get a little more commissary.
Well, that's good. I'm glad he's still able to do something while he's in prison. Fuck that guy, man.
Let's hope he's it's hot in his cell and he's perspirating a lot and it stinks.
Yeah, and
and he wishes he could have some
that's
Gaia,
right.
But he can't.
He can't. He can't even have True Crime Pine. He can't have nothing. I would be dishonored if he wore True Crime Pine. If you guys don't know what that is, that's True Crime Guy's very own scent from Oh My Gaia. Oh My Gaia is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness, and they use only all-natural paraben and aluminum-free organic ingredients. And like I alluded to, there's lots of scents like True Crime Pine, of course, and vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside, bergamot amber, sailor, pear is another good one. And guys, because you're True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the word creeper, CREEPER, which you are because you're a True Crime Guys listener, for 15% off your order at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. That's OHMYGAIA.com. Guys, you won't regret it. Going all natural, organic. It feels nice. It's light. I love it. Put a little under my arms. Put a little maybe on my chest. You know what I mean? Put it a little on the outside of your shirt if you want. The scent is perfect. It's not too strong. I've never been a fan of colognes in my life.
Me neither.
I've never liked colognes because I spray that shit on and that's all I can smell. And then once you stop smelling it, it didn't go away. Now everyone else, that's all they can smell. You know what I'm saying? But with a good smelling natural deodorant, you can put it anywhere. It's not going to stain your clothes. You know what I mean? It's not going to be harmful if it somehow gets in your mouth or whatever. But don't eat it. But it smells good enough you can eat it. Some of them. You know what I mean? Like pear. Just get you a big old scoop of that pear. I'm kidding. Don't eat that.
I may have done that.
You may have done it.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't blame you either way.
It was delicious.
Well, there you go. There you go, people. Oh my Gaia. ohmygaia.com. Guys, check it out and you will not regret it, guys. All right, man. We got some shout outs to get to this week, some new reviews.
Yeah. I gotta rate. Thank you, those of you who've taken the time to go rate and review the podcast on iTunes. It means a lot to us. So we got a few here to shout out. I want to say thank you to McMama for Life in the U.S. said, fantastic. I've been binge listening to these podcasts for a few weeks. I'm so glad I found it. The mix of crime and their stories, dark sense of humor is my favorite. It is easily my new favorite true crime podcast, and I've listened to a lot. Thank you. Thank you, McMama for Life. And then we got Morrison Mama in the U.S. We got a lot of mamas this week. And she says, NC Creeper here. Hey, y'all, love the show. I listen daily anytime I can. Love your sense of humor. Literally saying the same things as y'all. As in the Chris Watts case, you were talking about when the police officer called from his house to come home. When you were talking about his reaction, his butthole puckered. She said she thought the same thing and laughed her ass off at that.
Nice. Right on. We're getting quite a North Carolina fan base over here. Right on.
Yeah. Seriously, you're like infamous over there in your neck of the woods.
I might have to do a little meetup here. Meet up some Carolina creepers.
Right.
Cool.
I'm flying under the radar in Nevada, man. That's the way I like it.
Well,
we hardly ever hear from Nevada.
No,
creepers.
we have a lot of Nevada creepers. They're just, if you look on, if you go on Instagram, you can see them because they're at Golden Knights games or they're on the Strip or whatever. I see you Nevada creepers out there. But in Vegas,
speaking of, oh my guy. I got my beard going. My playoff beard is getting nice and big because the Knights are still in this thing, and I'm not trimming that thing until we win the cup. So I'm using a lot of Oh My God beard oil right now.
Right on. Hell yeah, man! I'm super excited about the Knights. I'm watching them from here on out. I saw the highlights of the last game. I'm like, hell yeah, let's see what's gonna happen. See what's going down.
Yeah.
Also, I want to give one more special shout out. Are you done with the reviews, or do we have any more?
We got one more, and then you can do your special shout out. I want to thank Lois Lane in the U.S. Just put some fire emojis and 5 stars, and that's the way to go. If you guys don't want to write out a big thing, you don't know what to say. Right. Just throw in some fire emojis and click 5 stars, and then we see the fire emoji review, and we get to give you a shout out. Otherwise, we don't. If you just click 5 stars and you don't write anything in there, then we don't see who did it. So
no idea. So
thank all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. Also, want to give a big shout out to the person who gave me this amazing coffee mug that I'm drinking out of today, Jake Tindo on Instagram. Jake, a big supporter of the show. We appreciate you very much. Guys, check out at Smokin' Jacks on Instagram. They are smoking meat up there in Michigan, and it looks amazing. It looks fantastic. You're talking about brisket, ribs. These dudes know how to cook, okay? Smokin' Jacks, and they just sent me this amazing mug. Lauren, have you got yours in the mail yet?
Can't wait to get mine. I'm guessing it's
on the way, man.
Day now.
It's on the way. I've been drinking out of mine every morning. Yep. It's great. Keeps your coffee nice and warm, and it has like a little slide lid. It has the nice compression fitting cap with the slide lid. Keeps your coffee nice and warm, or your drink cold, whatever you're sipping on.
Big shout out to Rach in Japan too. Sent us a bunch of goodies from Japan as well.
Japan Rach, thank you so much for that. That's my kids. Right now, there's origami all over my house, so thank you for that. And
heck yeah.
And my daughter uses the sake set to drink her water in at dinner. So she loves that little
I
tiny
love the
socky
snaps.
set.
She sends us Snapchats on a daily basis as well.
Yeah.
Of all the different things that she sees in Japan and like all the little cultural differences that are just fascinating.
They really are.
I've learned a lot about their culture over there. Like it's just cool. She walks around grocery stores and just shoots all kinds of stuff that she sees, like getting in taxis.
Yeah.
I learned that to taxi drivers, it's like rude to open your own door. They're supposed to open and close the door for you. They have like this handle thing that they pull on, and it's like a school bus, and it opens the door for you.
That's awesome.
This little shit like that.
It is cool. And like they really love some fried foods over there in Japan, don't they? I didn't realize they love.
Yeah, everything is like breaded and fried over there. Like everything.
They love some fried foods and corn.
Crazy.
Jesus, they love some cream corn. She sent me a picture of a cream corn sandwich. I was like, almost threw up. I was like, God, it looks like a biscuit, right? That's solid all the way around, but it has cream corn filling. And it's like you break it open.
Yeah, I guess don't knock it till you try it, huh?
I don't know, man. But it's just like if you ate it homemade meal, like so let's say you made cream corn and you made homemade biscuits. Yeah, whatever. Mix those together. But in a package that's sealed, like at a gas station, no thanks, man. No thanks.
It's a little weird.
I'm not throwing that in the microwave.
I generally don't eat gas station sandwiches regardless.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like if it's a homemade biscuit and some corn, yeah, okay, that's cool. But I don't know about this microwavable shit. I'm not down for that. It looked like a you seen those Uncrustables that they have in stores, the PB&Js?
Yeah,
It looked like that, but it
yeah.
had corn in it. But it was more of like a biscuit
Wow.
texture.
Huh.
Yeah, gross.
Well, if you want the cream corn sandwich of Patreon pages, check out our patreon.com/truecrimeguys. $2 a month gets you access to our premium episode, which comes out once a month. One out of every 4 episodes is on Patreon, not on our regular feed. That's why if you miss a week, it's not us not podcasting. It's us on Patreon doing a special episode for the patrons.
That's right.
$2 a month gets you access to that. If you go up to $5 a month, you get Just the Banta, where me and Michael sit down every Friday and we shoot the shit. People send us questions. You get to know us a little bit better. And we just joke around. We don't really talk true crime too much, but we just talk about, everyday stuff. This week, Michael wasn't feeling well, so I did it alone. So you got a solo podcast, about 20 minutes of me just rambling about stupid stuff.
Right.
That's $5 a month, get you that, as well as a very prestigious gold Creep Fan sticker at the $5 level. And then $10 a month, you can have a conversation with us. We're doing one next week. If you get in now to the Creep of the Crop level, $10 Patreon a month,
Well, by the time
you can jump into a Zoom call with us.
Right. Well, by the time you hear this, guys, it's in 2 days. Right. This comes out on Wednesday,
That's
so
right.
this Friday.
Yeah.
In 2 days, we will be having a Zoom call on Patreon. If you're on the $10 level, you can jump on there, and we will post with a link to the Zoom meeting, and you just show up on time, guys, and we'll all chill out, have a conversation, shoot the shit. It's very laid back. It's nothing structured.
Yeah, you'll have us for about 30 minutes
Yeah.
to just talk about whatever you want.
About 30 minutes, and then we jump off there and do Just the Banter, and you can ask questions and then get your answers right there on the Just the Banter that we post on Friday evenings. So it's the best way to engage with the show, in my opinion. And we have a lot of fun with it too, and we learn a lot about our listeners, which is pretty cool. All right. Anything else?
Speaking of listeners, if you haven't listened to our other shows under the True Crime Guys umbrella, check out
doing?
Strange and Unexplained.
Strange and Unexplained. Just released episode 60. 60
Holy
on Monday.
shit. Where's the time gone?
Where has it gone? Strange and Unexplained, guys. We cover lots of unsolved missing persons or just strange happenings on that show. We've gotten quite a few case suggestions that we've already covered on Strange and Unexplained. And I know if you just found True Crime Guys, you're making your way through the catalog. That's cool. No problem. Take your time. Strange and Unexplained ain't going nowhere. It'll be there. But if you're all caught up on True Crime Guys, you're already on Patreon, try that. Check out, you can search True Crime Guys in your app and you'll see Strange and Unexplained show up right below there. It is produced by us, obviously, True Crime Guys. And then there's also a Patreon page for that as well, patreon.com/S&U podcast, where you will get even more content. There's another show that I release on Mondays called Strange Shorts on that Patreon, as well as Sandu Stories. Sandu Stories is our once a month special episode for Strange and Unexplained. Kind of like we do the Patreon special every 4 weeks for True Crime Guys. Every 4 weeks on Sandu now, because the first 3 were released on the free platform, but from here on out, they will only be on Patreon on the $5 tier. But Sandu Stories is like an old time radio show. It's where the case is read to you like a story, rather, with voice actors, sound effects. It kind of paints a picture for you. It's a little easier to listen to. Most people say it reminds them of an old school radio show, and I think that's pretty much it. It's kind of what I was going for. Something that's it just draws you in. It's like listening to a movie almost. And we have different voice actors in that. You don't have to listen to me do all the voices. Lorne is pretty much our starring actor in most roles, as you can imagine. So
I get to play a killer quite often. It's awesome.
You really nailed it, especially in the first two. And the third one too. The bowling alley one may be my favorite actually so far. Now this one coming up is going to be a little different.
It comes natural, Michael.
I don't even want to know. But this Sandu Stories coming up is going to be a little different, which it'll be out on Monday. No. Yes, next Monday. So look out for that, right. Sandu Stories Chapter 4.
And just quickly, just to remind you guys, when it comes to Patreon, if you guys don't like monthly things that you have to pay for, you can always pay up front for a year, and it actually gets a discount. So on the $2 level, $21 gets you a full 12 months, and you don't even have to worry about
That's
it
right.
anymore.
You get a 10%
$21
discount.
and you're done for a year.
10% discount, guys. Yep. Oh, and great news. If you do want to sign up for Strange and Unexplained as well and try that, now annual memberships are available on there as well. Patreon finally let me do that. I don't know how the criteria works for that. It's just you whenever they make it available for you, you can use it. So when I first started Patreon for Strange and Unexplained, they weren't available, but now they are. So you guys can sign up for a year, which makes it so much easier. Not having to worry about that constant draw from your account every month. I know how it feels. It's hard to keep track of everything. You already got Netflix, Hulu, fucking Xbox Live and shit, if you're like me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it gets a little out of hand. So the yearly subscriptions, I think, really help put everything into focus. But
all right, we've rambled enough about our shit.
Wait, one more thing. The album. The mixtape. I gotta talk about the mixtape because it comes out tomorrow. If you're listening to this on on Wednesday the 17th, it comes out tomorrow on the 18th. Actually, Wednesday is the 16th, but the album still comes out on the 18th. Carry on.
Yeah, buddy.
Guys, I'm super excited. Search on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube Music, TikTok, whatever the hell you listen to music on. Search True Crime Guys mixtape, and that shit will be there, I hope. It better, because I put in a lot of work and a lot of time into this, so I hope you guys like it. Very excited about that True Crime Guys mixtape. This will be Volume 1. It doesn't say Volume 1, but this will be Volume 1. So more to come. All right. That's it. We're done.
Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week. Keep creeping.
Keep creeping, guys.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.